Life moves pretty fast.
You're crazy!
If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
Hello everybody, I'm Brandon Thompson.
And I'm Cameron Simpson.
Welcome back to my channel, and continuing on with 80s May of 2024. And this time we're taking a look at the beloved teen comedy classic, Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I'll admit I'm not that too familiar with John Hughes films, but given that this was the first one that I watched back then, I mean, this is by far my personal favorite. I love almost pretty much everything about this. I mean, it's flawless in my eyes. If I had to make a list of my favorite comedies of all time, I would definitely put Ferris Bueller's Day Off at least in the top 5, because that's how great this movie is. And a large majority of people would definitely agree with me on that. It's beautifully shot. It has an amazing cast, and you could tell that John Hughes this was a passion project for him, especially having a lot of scenes shot in Chicago, and especially given the limited budget that he had to work with. I mean, he made it work. I mean, you really got to commend him for that.
I would certainly, well, I do, really. As for what I would think of this film, to be honest, I love it. I do. I really recall the first time I checked it out, but I do know that I very much enjoyed it, and I still do to this day. It's just unbelievable how one kid can pretty much take one day off and just have the time of his life with his friends, even though he's missing school. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, and he's, doing all this, while avoiding, any such consequences.
Yeah.
And because his sister knows that he's full of shit, the dean knows that he's full of shit, and yet somehow he's managed to, do all this without facing any kind of consequence.
Yeah, he's got to be one of the luckiest kids in the world, I'd say, because he had plenty of close calls time and time again, and yet it's just unbelievable how he didn't get caught in some of this stuff.
Yeah, because there's only a few moments in the movie where you think that he might get caught either by his parents or by Rooney. Mm-hmm. But, it's somehow, a miracle somehow happens for him, because, he's just that damn lucky.
It's relatable, and it has an important lesson, about how life can moves pretty fast, and if you don't stop to appreciate it every once in a while, you're going to miss it. And honestly, I love the lessons and some of the comedy in this film, but there are just some points in all this that I just cannot believe he managed to get away with.
You can't help but love Matthew Broderick's performance as Ferris.
Of course. Seriously, he nails that character to a T, just like he does in some of his other roles.
Yeah.
But anyway, still, yeah, he, to me, is Ferris Bueller.
Before we discuss our thoughts on Ferris Bueller's Day Off, I want to give a big thank you to Rachel Wagner for collaborating with us on this video. I really love having her back to talk about Ferris Bueller's Day Off. So before we discuss our thoughts, it's your go, Rachel.
Hi, everybody. So today I get to give my quick thoughts about Ferris Bueller's Day Off. And I think in a lot of ways, Ferris Bueller's Day Off is kind of a perfect movie because it has a mixture of every emotion that you could want. It's got tender moments. It's got sincere moments. Of course, it's got lots of humor. It's very escapist. Something that, all of us wish that we were as cool, as confident as Ferris, but then you've also got his sister that's a very easy character to relate to, that's a ton of fun. But I think the real underrated character of the movie is Cameron. And I heard the other day that if you think about the movie from the perspective of if Ferris found out that Cameron was considering suicide, and this whole thing was just a stunt to get him to that moment where he confronts his dad with the car. Like the whole movie all of a sudden feels like really weighty and interesting. And I think there's some truth to that whether you believe that, whether you accept that fan fiction or not, the whole movie is leading up to that point where Cameron gets to the point where he confronts and he lets it all out with his dad in the car and his resentment and his frustration and everything like that. And that's a very, very moving scene and a very well acted scene. And it just makes for the movie a really satisfying experience because you've got the laughs, you've got the emotion, you've got characters that are likable. It's one of the few movies that you have a character that can break the fourth wall and it still work. A lot of times that falls really flat to me. In some ways, Ferris isn't a very likable character because he doesn't listen and is kind of rude and pushy, but he has the best of intentions, and he is trying to help his friends have this day and have this moment. And he's trying to live in the moment, which I think is an appealing concept. So I love Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Of course, it's got the iconic ending with Charlie Sheen, which is really funny. And it's got a great cast, and just everything that happens. The principal along the way is really funny. Principal Rooney. And so yeah, I think it's a great film. So let me know what you think of. So thanks so much for listening to my opinion. I'd be curious to see what Bevan thinks of this one. So thanks so much.
So the film starts off with Ferris Bueller, of course, pretending to be sick, and this is his 9th absent day from school. His parents buy him being sick, but his sister knows that he's full of shit, and Ed Rooney, the dean of students, also knows that he's full of shit. And I would say that out of most fourth wall breaking characters that we've seen in movies, I would probably put Ferris Bueller at number 2. I know a lot of people would sometimes put him at number 1, but number 1 for me is, of course, going to be Deadpool. And oddly enough, Deadpool in the first Deadpool parodies the ending, the post credits scene in Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.
When it comes to fourth wall breaking characters, I do find them funny most of the time, but I guess for me it really varies from one character to another depending on, who it is, what they're doing, what they're trying to make funny or make fun of something,
Yeah.
But still, in Ferris Bueller's case, I love that they added that little element, and it's just hilarious. Rooney is trying to tell his mom that he's been absent 9 times. He's got the records right in front of him, and Ferris uses his computer that he got for his birthday instead of a car to hack into them and change the number from 9 to 2. And Rooney is just losing it, man, right in front of the screen because he just couldn't believe what was going on.
Grace. I lose my shit every time that happens.
Despite how this film may start out with just a kid trying to skip school at the time of his life, there is an important lesson in this film that I very much enjoy every single time. You see, Ferris isn't doing this just to have fun on his own or with some girl that he met. He's actually trying to do this for his best friend Cameron so that he's not so wound up tight all the time in life, and just let him loosen up a little, have some fun.
Yeah, because he continuously deals with his father's bullshit, because apparently instead of his dad loving his son and his wife, he cares more about his Ferrari, which of course they take out when Ferris and Cameron pick up Sloane from school, because they also pretend that Sloane's grandmother has passed away, and
Yeah.
The lengths that Ferris goes through, and while at the same time avoiding getting out of trouble. I mean, he faces like no consequences for all the shit that he's doing, but because of like the stuff that like Rooney is trying to go through to like prove that's what Ferris is doing is just. It's just it's unbelievable, but it's also like really hilarious at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, one of my favorite parts in this movie is like one of the first things that Rooney does to try to prove that Ferris isn't sick and that this is all just a sham is that he doesn't believe that, you know, Salone's grandmother passed away. So, like, he asks them to produce the body before, you know, he releases the granddaughter from school. And it's just hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, because, I mean, having, like, a kid, like, pretend to be off school is, like, one thing, and, of course, like, pretending that your grandmother has passed away, that's also another thing, but, like, demanding to produce a corpse, I'm just like, well, fuck you, you disrespectful bastard.
Yeah, and then when Ferris calls on the other line to kind of ask if his sister can bring home some of his assignments, Rooney realizes how big of a mistake he made. And
yeah, I mean, hilarious. Because the look on his face is just priceless.
Yeah, I mean, and I love what comes next with Cameron doing the prank call on him, and he goes, "I'm sorry, sir. I believe I owe you an apology." And he goes, I should say you do. I should say you do. A family member dies, and you insult me. What's wrong with you?"
Well, pardon my French, but you're an asshole. And John Hughes makes use of Chicago very well in this film because of like all the like various exteriors and interior shots of Chicago that we get in the film, and of course the various locations that Ferris, Cameron, and Sloane visit, like the Sears Tower, the Ringlersville, the Art Institute of Chicago, and the Von Stipendied Parade, which is a spectacle.
Yeah, I mean, that one scene alone at that parade, to me, just is like the heart and soul of the whole movie.
There's also a mini subplot in the movie where a couple of guys, like, take care of the Ferrari while Ferris, Cameron, and Sloane are off enjoying themselves in Chicago. Well, in fact, they're taking the Ferrari for a joyride, and in one moment, John Williams' theme for Star Wars is playing, and I can't help but laugh every time that scene plays. The lengths that Rooney goes through to try to get Ferris is just... He goes above and beyond to try to like get Ferris to catch him, to see if he's like up to anything, because it's odd that his nemesis is a high school student.
Yeah, a little bit. It kind of, to me, makes sense considering you're the dean of the school and you got to preserve order around there. But when one little troublemaker like threatens that existence, I guess it's understandable, but it's also a bit weird because you think someone in that position, like Rooney, for example, would be above trying to do something like that and just let other people handle it.
Yeah, and he goes so far as to take personal time off to try to get Ferris, and goes so far as to go to his house. And of course, he first starts off by like ringing the doorbell, and of course a recorded message plays that Ferris made, and going so far as to breaking and entering his house while also getting attacked by their Rottweiler, which is just hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, it's just... I mean, are there even any words to describe, like, how hilarious that scene is? Is that Ferris's sister comes back home, and she's trying to prove, like Rooney, that Ferris isn't sick and that he's just skipping school. And then when she finds that out, she also notices Rooney is in the house. And I guess she's too frightened at the time to notice it's him. But as soon as they try to catch who they think is Ferris, like missing school, she just gets so scared that when she sees him, that she kicks him in the face and knocks him right out. Even gives him a bloody nose.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
Yeah. Also, I called the cops, and I also have my father's gun and a scorching case of herpes.
To add to all that, after everything else he's been through today, Rooney's car gets multiple parking tickets because he parked in front of a fire hydrant, and then by the time he realizes it, there's a tow truck there that takes his car away, and he just runs down the street trying to get it back.
He goes through hell in this movie, and we love every single second of it.
And if you ask me, he pretty much deserves all of it. Finally get the car back from those two guys that took it for a joyride without even knowing it. And at first, everything seems okay. You know, they had like the time of their lives, one of the best days ever, and they even got the car back intact. But then after that, on the way back, Ferris looks at the meter's limit on the car and notices it is way like over the top of what they did before, mileage wise. And when Cameron finally gets a look at it, Ferris just breaks the fourth wall again and says, "This is where Cameron goes berserk." And it's just hilarious.
Yeah, I mean, it was that shot of like Cameron screaming while also showing like various shots of Chicago, and it looks like he enters a catatonic state. And of course, both Ferris and Sloane are like concerned about his health, but of course, I mean, it's almost like he was faking it, and especially like when Sloane mentions in a later scene where she was like, "Did you see me get undressed in the jacuzzi?" Which implied that he most certainly did, while they thought that he was catatonic. But, of course, I mean, he, like, dives into the pool, and Ferris saves him.
Yeah, I mean, dive's one way to put it, but he just, like, fell straight in from a launch.
Yeah, just to make sure that Ferris would like, come and save him.
Yeah.
Ferris Bueller, you're my hero. In the next scene where they try to take the mileage off by putting the car in reverse, of course it doesn't work, so Cameron wants to, like, take whatever punishment he's gonna get from his father, going so far as to like kick the shit out of the car, denting it, and of course like forcing it to drive drive in reverse, smash into a window, and then driving off the side of a cliff, and just like and Ferris saying "you killed the car" is just that. God, they just nailed that scene to a T.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, I think one of the first things that came to my head when I saw that thing was two things. One, just what?
Even though we don't see his dad on screen, we get enough like information to like suggest that he's nothing but a complete asshole.
Yeah, I mean, that part really, to me, felt like sort of a bit of a plot hole to some degree, because we hear so much about Cameron's dad and a lot about like Stallone's family, I guess, but mainly we see Ferris's family all the time, and yet we never get to meet hardly anyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah, not to be a nitpick, it's just, I guess part of me was always curious as to what this dad was like, but I guess we got enough description from Cameron to kind of get the idea.
Yeah. Charlie Sheen also gets an appearance in the movie, and I do like the moment where his character and Jeannie like discuss like their problems and how he thinks that she should resolve them, which results in them sucking face in a brief moment. What can I say about the last few minutes of the film that hasn't already been said? Ferris like racing back home, like trying to avoid getting caught by his folks, and that music just every single second of it, I love it. I mean, it has been copied and parodied to death over the years, and
Yeah.
can you really blame people for trying to replicate the success of this scene?
Sometimes I can't believe it, given how short it is, and at times just how quick it can be to talk about a plot like this. It seems pretty basic, and yet it has this impact on you that you really just can't describe, and it makes it seem like it shouldn't work, but yet somehow it does.
It does. It truly does. And when Ferris gets home and he confronts Rooney, I mean, it's the first time we actually get a face-to-face moment between these characters, and right when we think that Rooney has finally gotten his victory, Jeannie steps in and saves Ferris. And to add further to Rooney's torture over the course of the movie, she tosses his wallet in the mud, gets the Rottweiler's attention, and he sicks his ass. Ferris, of course, avoids getting into trouble, and the icing on the cake in regards to Rooney's continuous torture is, of course, him on the bus with the rest of the students.
Yeah, and to me, basically to be specific, what makes that the icing on the cake is that usually for a guy like Rooney, that wouldn't be a problem because he's the dean of the school, but at this point he's been through like so much. He lost his car, his clothes are pretty much wrecked, his shoes are pretty much destroyed, and he literally has been just humiliated, spat on, and otherwise in this film over and over again. So for someone like him, who's got all this pride and a good reputation to uphold, that's got to be the ultimate humiliation.
It certainly is. Overall, when it comes to Ferris Bueller's Day Off, I mean, it is definitely a comedy classic. And despite seeing it like only a few times, I really don't have any problems with this movie. I mean, I love the cast. I mean, it's beautifully shot, well written, and directed. Just everything about this works so well. If you haven't seen this by any chance, do yourself a favor and watch Ferris Bueller's Day Off. You will not regret it. So I'm going to give Ferris Bueller's Day Off an A+.
Hallelujah, 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 hallelujah.
So what did y'all think of the film? Let me know in the comments below, and I want to give a big thank you to Cameron for collaborating with me on this.
Thanks, bud. I was honored to have that chance, really.
Yeah, and a big thank you to Rachel for collaborating with us. I always love having you here, and thank you again. Yeah. And guys, thank you so much as always for watching. Looking forward to doing more videos really soon. And if you want my thoughts on old or new films, of course, you know where to find me. You're still here. It's over. Go home.